This is the Aptitude Outdoors Podcast, where we interview travelers, explorers, and outdoorsmen and women to bring you the best tips and stories from around the world.
A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P.
That's how the show's starting. That's how it's going to start, with you singing the ABCs.
Oh, no.
Well, I didn't say sing it. I said say it.
That's
There's a
true.
difference.
You know, improv a little bit. I spent, 15 years taking piano lessons, and my brother and I would sit down at the piano bench and play together. So improv is kind of what I do.
Nice. Well, that's what this podcast is, because I don't plan anything. I just show up and start talking. So welcome, Christina, to the Aptitude Outdoors Podcast. I'm super excited that you're here.
I am super excited to be here, Paul.
We've done an episode of Take It Outside, the television show, before, and it was like mind-blowing, all the cool stuff you talked about. And I was like,
thank you.
We need to put this out on a podcast. So if you don't mind, why don't you tell everyone listening a little about who you are, where you work, why you like it so much.
Okay. And
just your social security number. No, I'm just kidding.
I'll have to think twice about putting that out there.
Okay.
But my name is Christina Kuchle, and I am the Northwest Region Scenic River Manager for the Ohio Department of Natural Resources. And we at state government have super long titles.
Say that again.
Okay. Northwest Scenic Rivers Manager. Now, if you want it to be longer, I can throw in the division. Division of Natural Areas and Preserves for the Ohio Department of Natural Resources.
That's like 13 words or 14 words.
And I'm sure it clarifies to you exactly what I do.
Sure. You do stuff with water. That's what I know. Which is cool.
Yeah, so I've got that really long title, but basically I get to spend a lot of time with the Maumee and Sandusky State Scenic Rivers and basically telling the public how cool they are and how we can all work together to make sure they stay healthy.
So we talk a lot on this podcast about the Maumee River. I think we've talked about it in every single episode. So that's why I was like, I know just the person who could probably tell us the most about the Maumee River.
Who's that? Do I know him?
It's not me. So that leaves you.
Oh, no.
How long have you been with ODNR?
I've been with ODNR for 7 years now. Okay.
That's a while.
Yeah.
I know what you're talking about then.
It's kind of surprising to me to realize that I started in January 2013 and 7 years have passed. Just like that.
That's because you like it.
Oh, it's super fun. I love this job. I wouldn't trade it for anything.
You're always like knee deep in the water picking up bugs and...
Oh, it's really fun. It's really great when you catch the leeches in the Maumee River, because a lot of people perceive leeches as all being blood-sucking, but that's not true.
Didn't know that.
Yeah, a lot of the leeches in the Maumee River, especially if you're catching them in the flowing channel, they are actually engulfing predators, which means they're going to swallow their food whole.
Sweet.
Yeah, and they're really excellent fish bait when you're fishing for saugeye.
Yeah.
They are fantastic.
Fish love leeches.
Yeah.
Is it because they move so much? When you get them on a fishing hook, they just like freak out.
Yeah, I don't know. It could be the movement. It could be that it's a pretty delicious snack for them.
Have you tried them?
No, I haven't. But
we should have brought some. We could have done like what is that, Fear Factor?
Oh,
tried.
Well, it's kind of cold to go out and get some leeches in the Maumee River now. But it never gets old for me to introduce folks to leeches and realize that, it's okay. It's not going to suck your blood. It's all right.
Well, that's what people who work for like the state and park stuff, they love to just show people stuff that would normally gross them out and like help make them hold it. I was at you guys do a lot of like booths and setups and like local events and stuff.
Yeah.
I can't remember. I think it was somebody from, what's that place out on the islands, the research lab, Stone Labs?
Yeah, Stone Lab.
They gave me a snake. And they're like, here, hold this snake. And then they walked away and started talking to somebody. And I was like, I don't want this anymore. Please take it away from me.
But that's some of the best ways to help folks overcome their fear of bugs and snakes. It's like, hey, this is a friendly critter. You can hang on to it for a while. And it's really lovely at State Fair State Fair is all hands on deck for DNR. And if you have not been to the State Fair in Columbus, it's usually last week of July, first week of August. And we have an entire park at DNR, or at the state fairgrounds, that is dedicated to ODNR as an agency.
Really?
So we have displays for Division of Forestry, and they have Smokey the Bear. And it's really cool because Smokey the Bear will talk to you and learn your name. And we have a huge display for the Division of Wildlife, and folks can go there and catch fish out of the streams at the DNR park.
What?
Oh, it's pretty. You clearly have not been there.
I've never been there, no.
Well, you can come and volunteer with us.
Sure, that'd be sweet.
And if you want to volunteer with us at State Fair, we can work with you, get you in, and you can come help work the State Fair with us, the Division of Natural Areas and Preserves. And that's really cool because we actually have a beautiful native wildflower prairie planted at the State Fairgrounds, and you can walk around that, and it's really cool. We've even had our chief of DNAP, Jeff Johnson. He would go out there and explain the plants to folks and tell you about the life history and how beautiful and valuable they are to the state of Ohio. So you've got that option if you want to come volunteer in Division of Natural Areas, or you can come work the touch tank with us.
That sounds freaky.
Oh, the touch tank is really cool. So especially if you're into streams and stream critters and crayfish and hellgrammites. Hellgrammites are another really cool one that'll
what is that?
Kind of freak people out.
Hellgrammite. If people are watching this on YouTube, I'll find a picture or something.
Oh, you should.
What is it?
You can find pictures of the larvae and the male and female hellgrammites online. So hellgrammite, it's of the Megaloptera order of insects. I mean, if you think of mega,
Sounds like a dinosaur.
It just implies that it's big. And yeah, it kind of is a dinosaur. I gotta say, of the different insects that we find in the streams, I think the hellgrammites are just by far the coolest. They're also probably the scariest looking. So some of them, when you get them as larvae, that takes them between as larvae, they live in the stream for about 1 to 5 years, just as a larvae. When you get those big 4 or 5 year old larvae, they're about 3 or 4 inches long.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you can kind of like picture the second or third finger on your hand,
that's a big one.
That's like a 4 or 5 year old hellgrammite larvae.
Hellgrammite.
Yeah, hellgrammite.
Do they sound like something out of a Harry Potter book, or like something you'd use in a magical potion? And
they are kind of weird. They're neat. A lot of smallmouth bass fishermen love to use them for smallmouth bass bait, because to us, if you're not into insects, you may look at that and think, whoa, that looks pretty freaky and kind of disgusting, because they also have these big like pinchers up by their head. And if you're not careful when you pick them up, they can bite you. And they can deliver a pretty powerful bite that can break the skin and draw blood. But
this is getting more exciting as you describe them. Like I'm very interested now. Like
some folks may think, "Whoa, that's super cool, and I need more information." Other folks, we may be turning off now. I apologize to those viewers in advance.
I've been in the river quite a bit, and I've never gotten bitten by one, so that's a pretty good sign.
If you're out in the river walking around, these guys are like, "Oh no, there's disturbance. We're going to run and hide," because not only are they a predator, but they are also a prey item. Mm-hmm. So they're totally looking out for their own good. But they're really, really cool when you find them, because not only are they super weird looking, but they're also one of the best indicators of stream health. So when I find them hanging out in a stream, especially the big old ones, that means the system has been functioning well for a long time. Those hellgrammites are happy. They clearly have enough food, and they're super cool.
So what intrigues me about what you do is it's like there's so much going on. Like you get to go out, work with the public, describe this cool stuff, but you're also doing like science, and you're also doing conservation. Like it's not just like, it's not a job where you just show up and you're like, I do my desk work and that's fun. And I have my XX I do today. Like you guys do everything.
Yes.
And it's so cool. Like you can ask anybody from ODNR a question about something like a hellgrammite, and they just know about it. That's why I created this podcast, so I could learn about these things. Because I don't know anything about it. Like, yeah, whatever you said. Yep, that's cool.
You do plenty. Some of your work is very inspirational. Like, I can't remember what it was, but it was the hike with the underprivileged kids through the mountains.
Oh, Mountain Mentors, yeah.
Yeah.
That was fun.
That was super cool.
It's the hardest thing I've ever shot.
Yeah. I have total respect for you going and doing that.
Thank you. I appreciate it, but
So.
it was a labor of love. I'll put it that way. But enough about me. I don't like caring about myself. So you don't strike me as the kind of person that just one day was like, I like nature. I'm assuming, with no prior knowledge, that you grew up one of those kids that was always outside in the dirt. Am I right?
Yes.
I knew it.
Yeah. It was pretty cool. So I was a city kid, actually. And now I live in a really rural area in Northwest Ohio. But my dad taught me how to hunt and fish. And I was on a scholastic trap shooting team, so I did that growing up. And I think one of the biggest things that really just had me intrigued with the outdoors and natural history was when my parents had a addition built on our house. And we live in northern Kentucky, but close enough to Cincinnati that you're in one of those regions that has really good fossils from the shallow sea that used to cover the U.S. And the foundation was being dug for the addition that was going on in the house. And I would come home from elementary school. I'm like, I'm bored. I'm gonna go play outside in the mud pit. And I would sit out there for hours and hours and hours with shovels and like hand digging tools. And I would just pull up these different brachiopods and pieces of coral. And I would very delicately take them inside and clean them off. And that was just one of the ways I started. I just enjoyed hanging out.
I literally did not envision it any other way. That is the image I had in my head when I was like, Christina Kuchle growing up as a child. That's you. Did your last name change? Did you got married? Am I calling you by your last name?
Oh,
wrong now?
you are correct though. I got married, but I did not change my name.
My wife didn't either.
Yeah.
And I don't have a problem with it. I don't care at all.
We appreciate the support of our husbands.
Yeah, well, I don't see why it
keep
matters.
our last names. Well,
I just thought of that. I was like, oh man, I feel like an idiot if I'm saying your last name wrong now.
oh no, you got it.
Okay.
It's all good.
Clear the air on that one. So, did you kind of... I'm assuming you probably have some sort of biology degree of some sort, or natural resources? Or...
Yes, in natural resources I do. I started out with a biology degree when I was at the University of Kentucky. Well, I started out on that path. And I realized that a biology degree is very general.
Yeah.
And I felt that it was very much geared towards the microbiology end, analytical chemistry end, involved some of those things that kind of geared folks towards med school, cell biology, those types of things. And those can be very valuable because I've worked in some environmental analytical chemistry labs before, and that knowledge is very valuable. But, you know, I really wanted some hands-on stuff that I could touch and see and feel. So I switched from a biology degree path to a dual degree in forestry and natural resource conservation management in the College of Agriculture at the University of Kentucky. So I got on that path, and
much cooler path.
I made that decision like midway through my freshman year and started on that and just went full bore with it. So I was one of those kids where it's like, I don't need a social life. It's fine. I'm going to spend my Saturdays with my textbooks, and I'm going to figure this stuff out.
That's usually what it takes to be good at something, though. You know?
That, and if there are any students listening to this podcast, I would certainly emphasize, too, that aside from having ambitious course completion goals, make sure you take the time to work with a professor or other faculty member that's working on something you're interested in.
Oh, yeah.
Because I did that, and I got to work for a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful forest fire ecologist named Dr. Mary Arthur at the University of Kentucky in the forestry department. And she was just super lovely. I started just volunteering in her lab for about 6-8 hours a week whenever I could fit it in. And I had different opportunities come up in addition to my coursework. So I was offered a fellowship opportunity at the University of Kentucky for undergraduate fellowship work.
That's
and I thought,
awesome.
yeah, I've got this dual degree thing going on that's pretty ambitious, but I'm going to add this on too because it sounds cool. And it sounds like a way that I can further develop my interests. Because at the time, I was really interested in invasive plants and how they were altering the landscape. And if we could figure out a really good way to try to correct for that alteration. I was really especially interested in bush honeysuckle, Linicera mackii. So I started out on that path, and I chose an undergraduate research project, and I went back to my mentor, Dr. Mary Arthur, and I said, I have this project, and I see that you have some grad students working on this same invasive plant in your lab. Can I please come volunteer, learn a little more, gain some experience? And that developed into a really wonderful relationship. I took on another fellowship opportunity in addition to that first one. And
Glutton for punishment.
Oh, really? I think at one point I had like a 23, 24-hour semester. In addition to working in her lab for like 6 to 10 hours a week and trying to manage my own research projects. And I picked up some volunteer work with community gardens on the side. And, you know, it's just really important when you're in school, take advantage of everything that is there. And yes, it can be very intimidating to realize, oh my gosh, I'm spending all my time on all this stuff. But it's really worth it because when you can have those tangible accomplishments and build those relationships with people, they can help write very good letters of recommendation for you. And then when you're completing your resume, on that resume, you can say, I have these skills in these different areas from this experience I had with this mentor.
Well, and I'm glad you brought that up. I was actually going to ask you that because a lot of kids, like myself included, when I went to school, no idea how to get into these fields. Like if you wanted to be a naturalist, if you wanted to be, you know, working conservation, I had no direction. Like I was like, what do you do? Like I was actually intrigued, and I think I've said this on every episode. I have an anthropology degree, and I really got interested in college about like anthropology and ecology coming together and like how humans affect the landscape in the opposite way of like how plants affect the landscape. But it all kind of rolls into one because humans bring the plants that affects the landscape, and then, you know, some people doing this upstream or downstream affect this and that.
Yep.
And like the effects all kind of snowball. So to me, I always like took that anthropology edge to the conservation or outdoors world, because like you're like as someone with like an ecology or forestry degree. What is your degree?
Well, it's one degree is in forestry, the other is in natural resource conservation management, and it's both are very much all-encompassing. Kind of like as you're discussing, you have your anthropology degree, and you kind of look at conservation through that anthropology framework. And it's a really good way to approach issues. Because the other thing that's important is when you're studying, don't box yourself in one specific specialty. What we're realizing more and more, just I don't care what employment sector you're in or what your area of interest is in, just being able to have a little bit of knowledge in multiple fields of study is so helpful. Because in the field I'm in right now, when it comes to working on the Maumee and Sandusky State Scenic Rivers and working with communities for their conservation, I mean, think about what the landscape is like around those river systems. You've got cities like Toledo that have gone through lots of different changes through the last century. The landscape here in and of itself in Northwest Ohio has gone through a lot of change in the last century that's been driven by settlement, that's been driven by economic changes, that's been driven by commodity prices of crops like corn, soy, and wheat. And to an extent, you could argue sugar beets, because at one point sugar beets were grown pretty prominently in this region. So when you're looking at conservation, it's great to have knowledge of the plants, but it's also great to have knowledge of the people and how the people have changed over time. We rely on the help of sociologists that have studied the population to see what their perspectives are on different conservation measures. Robin Wilson at OSU has done a fantastic job in that regard. And then we also have to be very aware of economics and how economics, commodity prices, and the whole economic framework kind of drives what we see on the landscape.
I think a lot of, like, when you think about conservation and in the general public's eye, people kind of leave out the economics thing. Like, it doesn't cross their mind. They're always like, oh, we got to pull out these invasives. But the economics of the area have so much to do with conservation. Like, the grant funding you can get and all of this stuff revolves around who basically has the most money to fix the problem. And, like, I think that's part of when someone just in general, like, and someone who doesn't really worry too much about conservation, when they're thinking about that, they're not thinking about the economics of it. They're just thinking of there's people out there doing something about that. And, like, that's in the sciences and in the social sciences, that, like, a lot of things boil down to economics, because that's what drives everything nowadays. People along the Maumee, people just are saying things like, oh, well, we need to just tell the farmers to stop doing that. Like, it doesn't work like that.
That's correct.
It does not.
Yeah.
You don't just tell somebody to stop farming. It doesn't operate in that way. So it's a great point you brought up about like even the rivers. I'm not too familiar with the Sandusky. So kind of what's some of the highlights of that river? I need to go out there with my kayak. I've done the Maumee. It's
great.
So fun, but the Sandusky?
Sandusky, I have a soft spot for. I really like it. It's beautiful. Sandusky is the main place where I find a lot of my hellgrammites, I'm not going to lie. And Sandusky is really neat because it's got a great blend of really cool river stuff to do. It's excellent to canoe and kayak. It's great to fish for smallmouth bass. It also has some really neat state nature preserves in its watershed. And if folks are unfamiliar with what a watershed is basically the whole drainage area across the landscape that helps that river form. So the watershed area for the Sandusky River is about 1,800 square miles, and it goes all the way, around Crawford County, out to Sandusky Bay, and covers lots of counties. It's fairly large. It's not as big as the Maumee, but it has some really neat things. And one of my favorite things about the Sandusky is, aside from the river, some of my favorite state nature preserves are in the Sandusky watershed. And it's really neat to go to these state nature preserves because when you drive across the Northwest Ohio landscape, you see a lot of row crop fields, corn, soy, wheat. We have fantastic soils here for that. It's an important part of our agricultural heritage. But it's really cool to have the opportunity to visit some of these state nature preserves to see what the landscape was like prior to all of that landscape modification. And Dahmer Savanna is in Crawford County. It's in the Sandusky River watershed. And it is unlike anything else you can see in the Northwest Ohio landscape.
Really?
It's covered in beautiful warm season grasses, and it has some bur oak trees that are like 300 or 400 years old. It's really amazing. And in a savanna environment, we're always used to associating the term savanna with like an African savanna when we're all sitting at home on a snowy day watching Planet Earth narrated by David Attenborough.
Sounds like a great day to me.
Oh, yeah, it's really fantastic. But we always associate savanna with, an environment that's on a different continent, like the African continent. But we do have some savannas here in the U.S., and it's really just amazing to walk them and see how they look. And you get the opportunity to do that through a state nature preserve like Dahmer Savanna. And the soil had never been plowed up, so it's just left as it would have been for a long time. And it's amazing when you walk it because it's not like a dense woods, but it's not like an open grassland. You've got these trees that are very open grown, that are very far apart. In some cases, they're like 50, 100 yards apart from each other. And then you just have this beautiful blanket of warm season grasses you're walking through.
Well, and that's one of the cool things about this region, that the savannas, you don't see anything like it. Like it's not like being in the woods, but it is. But you can see really far, and it just it's like this whole, like, the landscape has a feel to it. It's not like just going on a wooded hike. It's very like, I don't know, like if you're in the summertime and like the sun's just blowing through the trees and you got this like big canopy almost, but it's like not covered all the way. It's so cool. And you can just see forever. That's what I like about it.
Yeah.
It's like being in an open woods.
Yeah, and it's very different from how Northwest Ohio used to be, because Northwest Ohio historically was the home of the Great Black Swamp. So the Great Black Swamp covered it covered a little bit of Sandusky watershed, a lot of Maumee watershed. I mean, this was a huge wooded wetland, probably about 1 to 2 million acres of wooded wetland. It's just pretty incredible.
It's huge.
It's amazing to think that the city of Bowling Green,
It's out in the swamp.
they came and like, we're gonna set up shop right here in the middle of this here swamp. When you read some of the historic literature of how formidable the Great Black Swamp was, I gotta tip my hat to some of those folks for being able to figure out how to survive in that kind of an environment, because the Great Black Swamp was so inhospitable, the Native Americans didn't even live there.
They're just like, no thanks.
Correct.
I'm good.
Yep.
You guys are crazy.
Yeah, and it's really neat, though, that again, through the state nature preserve system, we do have some Great Black Swamp remnants. So you can get a sense of what that was like, because it was so dense that the tree canopy would block a lot of light to the forest floor. And there's a really nice example of a state nature preserve that demonstrates this down in Paulding County, and that is a preserve called Forest Woods Nature Preserve, and that is managed by the Black Swamp Conservancy. And I had the pleasure of going to this state nature preserve last June, and when you walk in there, you're wading through water. And it was in the afternoon. I think we were going through this around like 2 or 3 in the afternoon. And it was kind of a rainy day anyway. But you walk into the preserve, and it's like the evening.
Really?
It's that dark.
I need to check that out. Is there like trails through there? Or you just gotta
There
go
isn't
for
really
it?
a trail. That one, it's managed by the Black Swamp Conservancy, so you'd probably have to ask for permission to go on. If you would like to check out another example that does have trails and is a little bit more open, you could check out Gall Woods State Nature Preserve. And that one is managed by the Division of Natural Areas and Preserves.
Okay.
And actually, the wildflowers through there are really beautiful, and they're known for having some really cool 300-400-year-old oak trees at Gall Woods. And this is out in Fulton County near Archbold, so it's not too far.
I've heard of this one.
It's
I live
really
in Fulton
cool.
County, so that's probably why I've heard of it.
It's really, really cool. Have you been?
No.
Well,
I
you're going to have to put this on your list.
I'm going to do a podcast from the middle of the Gall Woods Nature Preserve.
You could. There's going to be an event to look at the spring wildflowers through there on April the 26th.
Okay.
From 1 to 3 at Gallwood State Nature Preserve. And you'll be able to go with some of our preserve staff. And it's really cool in the Division of Natural Areas and Preserves. We have lots of excellent botanists. So, I mean, those guys, they can really tell you what you're looking at, why it's important, how it functions on the landscape. They are fantastic naturalists.
That's the stuff I find so interesting, because I'm getting like the old tune of like Northwest Ohio, there's nothing to do here, it's so boring. It was just getting so old to me, because I used to think that. I was in the majority of people who was like, yeah, there's nothing to do here. And then I started doing stuff with the parks, ODNR. I started like meeting all these people. I mean, I could go out with you on a walk anywhere right now. Like where's the nearest park, like Swan Creek Preserve. You could probably tell me everything that I've ever wanted to know about what's going on out there. Just like, there's too much to learn. I can't even comprehend how much cool stuff there is here, and it just blows my mind.
Well, I think that's just a little bit of human nature, you know? We kind of all have the issue of, this is our routine. This is kind of what we see on our usual routine every day. And you just kind of get stuck in that rut. And, you know, it's really cool. And, you know, likewise with you showing me other stuff to do, because, you know, you're involved in the outdoors and you want to learn stuff. And I learned things from you. You learned things from me. We all just have to find that right community to realize what's really out there. Because when you have that opportunity to meet up with the right folks, you realize like, oh, dang, there is a lot of cool stuff that's still here.
Well, and I'm always so, excited about like when ODNR is putting on programs, you guys have paddles you do and stuff like that, because that's what gets people excited, and then you teach them cool stuff, and then they start to care.
Yes.
I think that's the biggest path to like getting people to worry about conservation is that excitement, learning, caring, and then they're like hooked on it. And they're like, oh, that's why this is important. And you guys do a ton of that.
Yes. We try to fit in as many public programs as we can because that's our opportunity to invite the public to come out with us, visit a state nature preserve or visit a state scenic river if they haven't seen it before, and like, hey, we know this, we will be your guide, and this is a resource that's here in your backyard, and this is why it's cool. Because in a lot of ways, you can see state nature preserve and state scenic rivers as a way of enhancing community identity. And saying, like, we have this really unique thing that really makes our community cool, and we're going to be proud of it.
Yeah.
You know, that's a large reason why a lot of folks at DNR are so passionate about conservation, is because we know the value of these landscapes, and we hope that we can share that value with others so they can enjoy them as much as we do. That's why we do this work. It's really cool. I mean...
And it's hard work, too.
It can be, yeah. It can be.
I see you rocking the Carhartt. I mean, you're outside working.
Yeah, office work can get tiring after a while.
Oh yeah, it's
and
the worst.
It's really cool to get out and do a program and see the excitement on the faces of the folks that have participated in your program, whether they're adults or children, just to show them like, hey, you have this in your backyard. This is really cool. I love doing that. And then there are some days when opportunity presents itself. You get out a chainsaw and you go out and you cut down some invasive plants. And just, it's rewarding too, because you can do that, you can break sweat, and then you can finish like, look at all that stuff I cleared out. And then when you clear out a lot of honeysuckle from the understory of the woods, then it helps make the Virginia bluebell that much more beautiful the next year.
Well, and there's something to be said for hard work. It just makes you feel good once it's done. Like it's just, and I've talked with people on other episodes about, it's no different like doing hard work or, you know, all those hours you spend out in the tree stand when you're hunting and it's freezing cold. When you get the deer, you're just like, this is why it's worth it. Like that hour, 2, 3, 5 hours sitting out there sucked. But then when you have the trophy, you're like, this is great. Which, by the way, I'm so jealous. You posted so many awesome hunting pictures this year, and I was like, I didn't get a single thing. I'm so jealous. That you shot some nice deer.
It was just luck. It was really a lot of luck.
Shh, you don't say that.
I'm gotta be honest.
Yeah, that's best that way.
But you know, something else that's just wonderful when you're outside, and you know, I've even had this in my unsuccessful deer hunts. You just sit, and I love sitting on the ground.
Yeah,
I usually don't
too.
hunt in the stand, but I'll never forget when I used to hunt this property in Kentucky. You can just sit there at the base of the tree, and I had a whole family of pileated woodpeckers just hanging out in the trees above. It was probably a half dozen of them, and it was like you can just sit there and you can listen and you can make up the story and personify the birds. 'Cause at least that's what I like to do. I'm like, that's mom and dad. They're telling the little ones to get jobs.
Well, the one time I was out there just sitting on a ground blind, we built with sticks, just hanging out, and a little baby great horned owl just above me calling for mom. It's like just as dark's rolling in. Like it doesn't get any cooler than this.
Yeah.
Like, and then you see mom fly across the field. Like it's like a mini, like a pony keg flying across the field. They're so big. It just blew my mind how big a great horned owl was. It's like a flying barrel. They're huge.
I'd never heard it described that way. That's a fantastic
I drink a lot of beer,
way
so all my analogies are based off beer.
Well, you know what? Saying that, though, describing it that way will help someone remember it.
Flying beer barrels. Remember that.
I'm never going to forget it.
Well, good. Use that on your nature programs. People will relate.
I'll just never forget the time that, you know, I was new to Ohio and I was getting to know the area. And so I wanted to check out the state nature preserves, since a lot of the state nature preserves are an example of what Ohio would have looked like in that area pre-European settlement.
Yeah.
So we've got really cool examples of native landscapes out there. And Sorry about that.
Oh, that's okay. It happens.
I usually silence all my stuff.
No, don't worry about it.
So anyway, I was out at Lawrence Woods, and it's really cool. They have these beautiful buttonbush swamps, and they get covered in chorus frogs in the spring, and the sound is just about deafening.
Oh, yeah.
And so I went out there to hear the chorus frogs, and that was just incredible. And then I got to a quieter portion of the trail, and then I had the living daylights scared out of me by a barred owl. That thing was probably 20 feet from the trail, up in the tree. I couldn't see it, and I just hear, "Who cooks for you?"
Yeah.
I'm like, oh my gosh.
There was I was doing a night hike once with the mountain managers group you talk about. We take them out sometimes and do like pre-hikes to get them used to being in the dark and stuff like that. And this little screech owl is above our heads. We're just walking in the dark, and it's just, you know, and everyone froze. They were like, "What was that?" And we shine a flashlight up in the tree, and it's like a little potato sitting on a log or a tree branch. So like the stuff you see outside, owls are the coolest. I never thought I'd see an owl in my life.
Neat. Yeah.
I don't know why I like them so much. They're just cool birds. Woodpeckers, owls.
Well, it's cool when you think about, you know, the stories that we grew up with. Like even Winnie the Pooh, you know, there are animals in it. There's an owl featured in it. And it just seems like from these stories that we read as children, it kind of sets some of our expectations of certain animals in the wild.
Mm-hmm.
So it's pretty cool. You know, I think from a lot of those stories, we kind of look at owls as being, you know, wise and knowing creatures.
And they will attack you from the sky.
Yeah.
And they're super awesome birds of prey.
They are cool birds of prey. I had a great horned owl hanging out in my little village where I live, and I could hear it calling as I was taking an evening walk one night. And yeah, it's amazing when those things take off and fly, you cannot hear it.
No. It's amazing how a bird that big can be that light enough to fly. One of the coolest things I ever saw was actually staring out my front window. We used to have this giant, like, overgrown bush when we moved into the house.
Yeah.
It was, like, right in the middle of the front yard. So this giant bush, probably about 5 feet tall, and this Cooper's hawk. I'm looking out the window, just, like, drinking my coffee in the morning, like, oh, it's a nice Saturday. The Cooper's hawk just tears over the house, flies into the bush at full speed, and just attacks a bird.
Yep.
I was like, that is the coolest thing I've ever seen. Just that's, like, in my front yard. What the heck? Those birds of prey are amazing.
They are fantastic. I've got a couple Cooper's hawks that like to hang out by my bird feeders too, and
Get a little snack.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, that's what they do.
Yeah, I know my parents, they've got a similar problem with their feeders back home, and they don't like the hawks, but I figure, you know, it's a complete ecosystem.
Yeah, it's just nature doing
Complete
its thing.
ecosystems involve predators.
Yeah,
Just
sorry.
it happens.
Stuff eats. That's just the way things work.
Yeah.
So I got to ask you, what is your favorite part of the Maumee River? I'm sorry, I had to ask it because I have one, but I want to hear what you have to say. Well, it's not even if you feel more comfortable ranking them. I know it's like naming your favorite child, but the Maumee is so cool. It's cool down by Toledo, it's cool down by, but there's parts that are a little more remote.
Okay, I'm going to have to go with a more remote choice here. My favorite part of the Maumee River, and this isn't necessarily because of the boating opportunities, it's because of the work and the type of property that's around the river in this area. My favorite spot is down by Cecil, Ohio.
Okay.
I really love Forest Woods Nature Preserve, managed by the Black Swamp Conservancy, because the Black Swamp Conservancy, which is an excellent land trust working in Northwest Ohio, they have done a phenomenal job working with landowners to purchase property around that state nature preserve to protect the state nature preserve, and they have done an excellent job restoring it. So they have a really cool stream restoration project in that area. They have worked on restoring a floodplain right around the Maumee River. It was property that was cropped, and now it's getting planted so it can resemble a natural habitat again. that down there is by far my favorite. They have planted thousands upon thousands of trees to reforest what was cropland.
I believe that's one of the boat launch areas now, too. They have like a launching area for your kayak for the river trail, Scenic River Trail.
For the Maumee River Water Trail,
Maumee River Water Trail.
We got long titles.
Yeah. I'm just going to call it the Maumee River Water Trail from now on. I don't know which. There's too many titles, but no, that... you know Bill Heflin from Wood County Parks, maybe in Cubers with Craig. Yeah. Uh-huh. So him and I, my wife, and Amanda Demolsky from Metro Parks, we did the Fort to Port last May, the whole river. And the water trail, those maps were so helpful. I'm so glad that happened. Toledo
Metro Parks did a really good job on the maps.
It's awesome.
They did a very good job on the maps.
The only part that was brutal is the first, the day through Indiana, we had to just use GPS maps. And I was like, this sucks. So I will say, you guys, Ohio DNR, Metro Parks, everybody that partnered with this is kicking Indiana's butt. The river is so much cleaner and nicer in Ohio. No joke.
Really?
I'm not blown away by how much nicer the river is. And I even said it when we filmed part of it for the show. I was like, Indiana, sorry, you got a lot of work to do. Lots of litter. I don't think there's many organizations up there that are just devoting the time and resources that you guys have.
There are some organizations, like the Save Maumee organization.
There's just not as many.
Yeah.
You guys are working around the clock to preserve the rivers and make them as healthy as possible. And Ohio is just far above and beyond what I noticed in Indiana. And I can say that because I can't.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I will confess, I've never floated the entire stretch of the Maumee River before. I've done different sections of it. I've never been on the Indiana side either.
You're not missing much.
Okay.
I have to say it. It's because I believe it. Their dam that they have up there is all beaten down. There's no really good pull out. It's all urbanized for the most part. And not that it isn't like that in Ohio in some spots, but so much cleaner in Ohio.
Yeah.
A lot of nature preserves along the river too. That helps.
I will say one thing, that when it comes to maintaining these waterways, we at DNR work hard. A lot of our partners work hard too, because one thing I always tell people whenever we're doing a stream quality monitoring workshop, or if I'm giving a public presentation to talk about scenic rivers and, maintaining the Maumee and Sandusky with the quality they have, is that I always tell people we rely on the public to help make this stuff happen.
Absolutely.
I mean, us and the way we function and the things we do, the missions we have all that because the public wants us there and the public helps. Because in the Scenic Rivers program, we do the best with the staff we have, but ultimately it's a lot of our partners and it's a lot of citizens stepping up and saying that, well, I like this resource and I'm going to help care about it. That partnership helps to magnify the message and really helps to make things work.
Yeah.
So the public acceptance towards the ideas of, yes, we do want to have a good river. Yes, we take pride in this because it's part of our community identity. That really makes it work.
And I'm glad you said Cecil Bridge when you were talking, or Cecil, that township area.
Yeah.
The reason Cecil Bridge is one of the landmarks we use to do a mile marker. So when we were kayaking, and I literally was going to say the same thing as you about my favorite part of the river. From Antwerp to Cecil Bridge is just the river's not this giant Maumee that we have here in the Toledo area and a little bit further up where the dams start. It's this little smaller flowing river with lots of loops and winds. And it's just, have you floated that part?
I haven't. I have it on my list to do it.
Beautiful. It's
I really want to.
Early when it was May and the leaves were starting to come in the trees and it was looking real nice. The river was really high and it was moving really fast. That made it way easier.
Yeah, I would imagine
Those big loops though. It's just you do a big loop for a mile or two, you come back down and you do it the opposite way, and it's just so relaxing.
Yeah, and it's neat when you look at the Maumee River on a map and it has all those loops in it. That's very indicative of how the river was shaped, in that it's a very low gradient stream. So by low gradient, that means it doesn't have a lot of fall per mile. In many cases for the Maumee and Sandusky, since this whole region was glaciated, so we had, half mile of ice, which is just, I can't even imagine what that would have been like back, 10,000 years ago. You had this half mile of ice come down,
I wish I
hang
could
out
do
in
those-
Northwest Ohio for a little while, and then go back to Canada.
I wish I could do those
Just-
like cool infographics that they do on like the Discovery Channel, where it's like take a picture and like this is what it would look like with a half mile of ice. I can't imagine it either.
I can't imagine standing in front of that and like, hi. Just,
It's like the ice wall in the Game of Thrones or something.
hey, that's a good way to think of it. But
Whoa.
just to imagine that came and slowly crushed all this landscape and then receded. And as a result, if you're a beginner canoeer or kayaker, if you're hitting the rivers at normal flow, and you can check normal flow from waterwatch.usgs.gov,
Great website.
the rivers here are pretty tame because since we had that glacial activity, if you look at the landscape over the course of a mile, especially where the rivers are, they maybe fall about 2, 3, 4 feet
Yeah, it's not
over the
much.
course of a mile. I mean, in other watershed areas, it's usually a lot more than that. So if you're a beginner, these are great rivers to start on. And there are lots of access points too, like on the Maumee River. If you're new, you got your boat, you want to try it. I like to use the Farnsworth boat launch near Waterville because you've got really cool islands to paddle around. You've got Missionary Island right there. And you can go around that island complex, and you've got pretty good coverage out there to track on your phone where you're at. That if you just go around those islands, that's about 5 river miles.
Yeah. And you can end right where you started.
Yeah.
The river's not moving so fast that you can't go back.
Yeah. As long as you catch it at normal flow.
And don't get sucked
that is
into
the
the
main caveat.
Well, yeah. But the islands are cool too because they provide a little bit of cover. There's plenty of stuff to see in there. I mean, you're out there all day long seeing cool birds.
Yeah.
I can't tell people enough how awesome it is.
It's really fun. It's very peaceful because you're close enough to a takeout so you can have that comfort so you don't feel like you're out in the middle of nowhere and have a long way to go to take out if you need to. But yet you can have those very nice, peaceful experiences where it's just you and your boat and the trees. And you can enjoy that. And it's really neat in the summertime because a lot of the riverine flowers are blooming and there's this beautiful pink bloom of the marshmallow.
Yep.
And you can just take it in and enjoy it.
So does sorry, my mouth's dry. Do you have like a favorite spot in the islands around Farnsworth?
Yeah. It's really neat. I get a lot of professors that call me and ask if they can work with me to have a kind of river monitoring / paddling experience with their class. And so I like to put in at the Farnsworth boat launch, and I actually paddle upstream. And right after you get under the power lines, there is a little inlet behind Missionary Island through there. So I like to take the students in through there. And again, the river's nice and calm when you catch it at normal flow. Usually if you're doing floats in September, it's usually at low flow, so it's pretty still.
Yeah, it's like a lake.
Yeah, it is like a lake. So if you're new, it gives you a lot of opportunity to, you can miss a stroke and you're not going to end up like a mile downriver. But you can get between those islands, and that's when I usually stop the group and I talk about the history of the Great Black Swamp and talk about how much the Maumee River has changed over time. Because the Maumee River used to flow, differently than it does now. If you look at the history of the USGS gauge in Waterville, that gauge has almost been there for a century, measuring water flow out of the river. And that water flow has dramatically increased over time. So at one point in time, when you look at those islands, like Missionary Islands and other little islands around it, those were actually sediments that were deposited by the river that built those islands up. And now that we have a lot more flow coming through the river than we ever used to, because the Great Black Swamp is no more, those islands are actually being eroded now by the river.
So The Great Black Swamps, essentially were like holding compartments for all that extra water, and now we've filled them all in with houses and dirt and more land to soak up all the wetness, and all that water's flowing into the river.
Well, there's also a lot of subsurface drainage.
Tile and stuff,
when you get on Google Earth, you may, just see some of the fields in the area and notice different lines through those fields. Those lines often reflect where the tile are. And I don't say that to vilify drainage at all. I mean,
it's necessary to grow food.
I would not want to live in the Great Black Swamp. We admire it from afar now because we don't have to deal with the realities of living with it. It's very true. When you read the histories, like, it was not a cool place to try to live. It amazes me that back in the day, before we had heavy equipment, we were just using horses and manpower. It just amazes me that they were able to drain it. And as a result, it's opened up some of the most productive farmland in the nation. But, we can see now that there were consequences from draining the Great Black Swamp. And that's why it's been really cool under Governor DeWine. He has been very progressive for addressing water quality issues, and he worked with the legislature to appropriate $172 million for the H2 Ohio initiative that we have been working on super hard at DNR. EPA has funding from it. ODA has about $30 million, and we at DNR have $46 million. And at DNR, our specific task with our H2 Ohio funds is restoring wetlands where they make sense. So we actually have opportunities to put the Great Black Swamp back in some places.
That is so awesome.
Oh, it's really cool. We're looking at everything from floodplain restoration to wetland restoration, and you can put wetlands strategically in the landscape. And so the Black Swamp Conservancy came up with this excellent idea of really trying to focus on wetland restoration at stream confluences. Because at stream confluence, that's where you've got some small watersheds coming together. So it's like an end point. It's like an end pipe. So you can put a wetland in to treat some of the agricultural drainage or, other nutrient-laden drainage coming through that end point. So that's a location where restoring a wetland can really provide a lot of bang for the buck.
Is that something that you think would, help with so much sediment in the river, and especially the Maumee? Is the Sandusky the same? Does it have a lot of sediment in the river?
Yes. Sandusky, Maumee both are pretty heavy sediment-laden streams. They carry a lot more sediment now than they used to.
Yeah, and I always am trying to tell people, like, it's just dirt. I mean, I know there's other stuff in there. There's, like, nitrogen, phosphorus, all these fertilizers and stuff. But, I mean, you're going to get some of that in just about any river. Like, no river out there is just this, like, put your hand in and drink from it, and you're going to be, like...
Yeah. Even some of the most pristine streams, like, we are all used to drinking chlorinated tap water.
Exactly.
I mean, those are standards set by the federal EPA to maintain a level of either chlorine or monochloramine in the water that we're drinking to, reduce harmful bacteria that can cause disease. So... yeah, your immune system is not ready to go and drink water from the actual environment.
No, it's not advised in any situation.
I mean, I'm sure you have been out, backcountry hiking. You've done a lot more of that than I have, and I'm sure even if you get water from a stream, you still have tablets.
Always, I'm always filtering it. Yeah. I've never drank water unfiltered, untreated in any way because it's just not smart.
Yeah.
Because I mean, you're gonna risk it so many times, and you're gonna be fine, and then one time you're gonna end up with giardia, and you're gonna be crippled in the hospital for a month or two trying to recover from that, or like cryptosporidium in your brain or something. Like, you don't want that. Why take that risk?
That does not sound fun.
No, and I'm not saying people do drink the water out of the Maumee River. I don't know if they know it or not, but I mean, Bowling Green is.
Yep.
That's where the public water supply comes from.
That's Bowling Green's water supply, Napoleon, Defiance. Yeah, there are a lot of entities that rely on the Maumee River.
And they were totally fine during the water crisis. A little bit. So do you have any favorite animals. We're getting a little low on time here. Any favorite animals on the Maumee Sandusky River? What's your kind of like your crowning jewel of this area?
Oh, I gotta say, it's the greater river red horse.
What is that?
It's a really cool fish.
Greater river red horse.
Yeah. It's a state-threatened species, and the Sandusky River is known for having one of the largest populations of this fish. It's really cool. You can look up a very nice picture of it from the Division of Wildlife website, and we actually had a really cool fish biologist come up to do a program on the fishes of the Sandusky River, and he specialized in the greater red horse, and I was working with folks to organize the program. I said, yeah, we're going to have this fish biologist come up. His name is Brian Zimmerman. He, if anybody's familiar with Norman Trautman's book on the fishes of Ohio, he basically worked with different researchers across the state to regather all the data to rewrite that book. So it's a pretty complete record of all of Ohio's fishes and the major tributaries where you can find them.
That sounds like a very hard book to write.
It's really cool, though. It's basically, he put it into a really nice field guide where you can flip to a specific fish you're interested in, and it shows a map that shows Ohio, a lot of the major drainage tributaries in the state of Ohio, and it produces a dot that shows where that fish has been found.
I need to get that book.
It's really cool. So we had the biologist that helped with that book come up and do a Sandusky River fish program, and I was explaining to some folks, I said, yeah, you have these really cool fish living in the river. And, you could see a little bit of apprehension about that. Like, really? Are they really going to find anything? Because at this particular section where we're shocking the river, it's very shallow. Mm-hmm. And some folks have the perception that, well, if the river is shallow, that's not good for fish to live because they could run out of water. But it's really not the case, because where we have that shallow water and you've got water quickly moving and babbling over the rocks, that's adding a lot of oxygen, so that's great for aquatic macroinvertebrates. You're going to find a lot of aquatic macroinvertebrates, like the hellgrammites I mentioned earlier, in those more shallow portions. So it's really good to have those, and they're also transporting lots of food. Stuff will get dislodged and moved. And so we're in that shallow area. You could wade in water about knee deep, and had waders on to go and shock with Brian Zimmerman. Within, 5 minutes of being out there, managed to catch 5 different species of these red horse suckers. We've got 6 in the Sandusky. He caught 5 of the different species, including 2 of the state-threatened greater river red horse in about 5 minutes.
These little tiny guys?
Oh, these are big guys.
Really?
Yeah, they're big guys. So they're like a 2-foot, 3-foot fish.
Really?
Yeah.
I need to see this. I had no idea.
Cool. I know. And that's why it's really fun to do some of these programs and advertise them to folks, because, they don't realize what these rivers have. And nothing brings me more joy than being able to do a program like this and invite people out that have just always lived along the river and, seen how brown it gets. And it kind of creates a perception of, well, it's not a clear stream where I can see stuff, so I'm just going to assume nothing there is there. Mm-hmm. I mean, I've had the mistake of doing that too. It's just human nature. But
you can't see it, it's not there.
Right. But when you bring up an expert that really knows how to look for this stuff, and they can show it to you, it really changes your perception. And I love being able to see the look on people's faces when I tell them, like, this is what we're going to do. I'm like, oh, okay. And then we actually go do it, and then it's, whoa. Whoa, that's there.
There's probably so many species of animals, fish, everything around here that nobody knows exist. I mean, there's a whole book on fish of this area, and I guarantee you, I haven't heard of 90% of them.
It's really cool. And if you ever want to have your mind blown away,
yes,
I highly recommend going on some of the wildflower hikes we have scheduled through our state nature preserves. And we're going to have programs scheduled for scenic rivers as well throughout the year when it stops being winter. And it's really cool. You can come hang out with some of our biologists and learn about this stuff. I mean, you can learn about rare plants. You can learn about the critters that we have in our rivers. Plants are really nice because if you're into photography, they don't move fast.
Interesting. I'm a little into photography. It's fun.
I really like photography and I love photographing stuff, and I really love plants because they don't move.
And they're very colorful most of the time.
They are really colorful, and it amazes me too. I'm not a very good botanist, but when you look at plants, you can actually see some of the symmetry to them and the order that they have. So you think, oh, it's a field of flowers, it's all chaos. But when you pick out those specific plants, you can see, oh, it's got 2 opposite leaves all the way up the stem, or it has, portions of its flower that are organized in a series of 4, where it's got like 4 petals, 4 stamens. It's all bases of 4. And you can count those different mathematical features. And it's just kind of fascinating to realize when you look at a flower up close that it has such specific order to it.
It's awesome. Nature does cool stuff. Like, I actually, last night I just had a photographer on the show, and we were talking about how nature is so amazing for photography because it does all the work for you. You take a picture anywhere outside, really, in nature, flowers, a little salamander, and it's just so cool because they have all these unique features. They have all these colors. Like, it's the most interesting form of photography for the least amount of work.
Yeah, and that's just, I think, one resounding theme from this podcast is just the inspiration of being able to see this stuff and always being surprised by something new and inspired by something new. And that is why we all work so hard in the Division of Natural Areas and Preserves, is because we get to see how special this stuff is every day. And we love being able to share it with the citizens in Ohio.
Well, that's what's so cool about everyone I've ever met that's worked in, ODNR, the parks, natural resources of any sort. Like, it's not like you go into an office building and you find an accountant and they're just like, yeah, I'm an accountant. Like, every single person's like, yes! Every time. Nobody's ever bored. They're always so excited. Like, yeah, I wouldn't get an accountant in here talking about, like, doing people's taxes for an hour and be just excited about it. Maybe I would. I don't know. But everyone that works in the outdoors industry is so stoked all the time. And I love it because it is that exciting. To me, I don't understand how people don't like to go outside and go explore in nature. To me, it's just so, like, I don't play video games. I don't do anything. Like, I just go outside when I want to have fun. And it costs me $0.
Yep.
Minus my camera equipment, which is pretty expensive.
I've gone down that rabbit hole before, so I totally get where you're at.
But before we wrap things up, I know there's some programs coming up that you wanted to kind of let people know about, and I want them to know about because I want them to go to them.
All right. So if you are into river work, I highly recommend you can check out the Ohio Scenic Rivers Symposium. That's going to be on March 20th. It's going to be at the auditorium at ODOT's main headquarters.
Okay.
So that is coming up. And again, if you get stir crazy this winter and you need to go out somewhere, the state nature preserves can be pretty cool to visit. Just for a state nature preserve, it's not like a state park or other park. A lot of parks, they're set up with recreation facilities and restrooms and those types of things. If you visit a state nature preserve, they usually don't have a lot of facilities like that because our state nature preserves are prioritized around trying to help protect that pre-European settlement condition. But if you really want a cool opportunity to look at some of this stuff, there are several state nature preserves in the Northwest Ohio area, like Irwin Prairie. That's a real cool one to visit because it's just an open, wet sedge meadow.
I've been out there. It's really awesome.
It's super cool. Dahmer Savannah is really cool to see in the winter. Even Gull Woods is neat to see in the winter.
I might check that out this weekend.
Yeah, there are trails that you can go, check out. Request that, please don't bring your pets because, as you mentioned, the anthropology end on conservation is just, unfortunately, we do have to be careful about spreading invasive species. But they're a really cool, rugged landscape to check out. So if you need a break from winter, just put on a warm coat and go check out a state nature preserve. So there are going to be more programs coming up. We've got several hikes planned in different state nature preserves in the spring, largely in April and May. One thing I will highlight specifically for this program list is that the Division of Natural Areas and Preserves was able to purchase more land for Lakeside Daisy State Nature Preserve. So if you've ever heard of Lakeside Daisy, again, if you're in the Toledo area, you're not too far from this spot. Lakeside Daisy is a type of really cool, rare plant that likes to grow on what we call alvars. So these are just basically, it's like bare limestone. There's hardly any soil at all, and this plant thrives in that type of a harsh environment. So there was a new land acquisition done at the Ohio Department of Natural Resources to help protect more habitat for Lakeside Daisy. And this property was acquired last spring. There's going to be a hike out there on May 9th, 2020 at 1 p.m. And this rock is filled with fossils. I had never been to any of our state nature preserves before where with every step you took, you were stepping on a fossil.
Is it like on the shores of Lake Erie?
It is on the shores of Lake Erie.
It's funny because I actually recently learned what alvars were by being on one.
Yeah.
And they're so cool. It was on
really,
Lake Erie.
Yeah. They're absolutely incredible. And for that Lakeside Daisy event, our preserve manager was actually able to work with a paleontologist.
Oh, that's
cool. To have
cool.
a paleontologist come up and share some of those features.
And there's tons of them out there. They're just little fossils of shells, and you don't even have to look. They're just there. There's like every step you take, they're just everywhere on the ground.
Yeah, and so this would be a hike through some of the new property that was acquired, and just this stuff is preserved beautifully. It was absolutely incredible. So if you've got an opportunity to go out there, go do it.
I think I need to put that on my calendar, my personal calendar.
And if you're interested in putting stuff on your calendar, the Ohio Division of Natural Areas and Preserves has a great, very active Facebook page. So you can go to that Facebook page. It is simply Ohio Division of Natural Areas and Preserves. And they have events listed there, and you can see all the events that the division is doing.
And why don't you give everybody your website too?
Okay.
If you can find it.
So the website for DNAP is naturepreserves.ohiodnr.gov. In Scenic Rivers, we just got moved into DNAP, so our website hasn't moved over yet. So for Scenic Rivers, if you're interested in our critters, like the hellgramites and leeches I was describing earlier, you can go to watercraft.ohiodnr.gov/Scenic Rivers. And
I love that website because of all the cool fish drawings. They're not pictures. They got like all the drawings of the different animals. Like the ODNR website, if you're looking up like hunting laws and stuff like that, there's totally pictures, like hand-drawn sketches of all these cool animals. I love it. I love looking through it.
That's cool. Yeah, there's a lot of good stuff up on our website. It's really neat. If you go to the Division of Natural Areas and Preserves website, you'll see information. And this is a happy story. 4 lost Ohio plant species rediscovered in 2019. There was one rare plant that was found in Ohio that had not been seen for 100 years.
Whoa.
Yeah. So it's really cool to be a part of that division of the Ohio Department of Natural Resources that's really looking at like our coolest and rarest stuff across the landscape and trying to make sure we hold on to it so we can maintain that botanical catalog of what Ohio used to have pre-European settlement.
Well, with that, I want to thank you so much, not only for the work you do, because it's amazing, but for coming on and just teaching me a bunch of awesome stuff. So I love to have you back, and maybe we can get some biologists in here with you, and you guys can just like nerd out, and I'll sit here and listen and learn. Oh, very interesting.
Yeah.
So
there's a lot to it, and I appreciate too that you're so willing and eager to learn. I appreciate the listeners that are going to listen to this podcast, because really a lot of this work happens thanks to public support.
So give ODNR your money now.
Oh, it's not even that necessarily. Sometimes it's just as simple as knowing what we do, and if you like what we do, advocating for it.
Yeah. That's the most important thing. Not everybody has money, but everybody's got time.
advocacy is a really big deal. You know, if you like something, or if there's something you see that is frustrating to you that you'd like to see change, it's a matter of communication. Communication is really important for getting what you want.
Exactly. And that's what we're doing. We're communicating to the greater world and Northwest Ohio. So thank you very much, Christina. We'll have you back again, and I hope you had fun.
Thank you. I had a wonderful time. I will come and do podcast recordings with you anytime, Paul. It's a pleasure.
Be careful what you wish for.
I'm good with it.
Peace out, everyone. Hey, everybody. Thanks for watching this episode of the Aptitude Outdoors Podcast here on YouTube. If you can, hit that subscribe button down below and give us a hand. Really like to thank Christina Kuchle from Ohio Department of Natural Resources for coming on. She's such a wealth of information. She knows everything about all the little critters and all the big rivers, and she's super awesome. So thanks, you guys, for watching. We'll see you next time.